Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington as the economy reaches an unsettling new milestone. The U.S. debt hitting $40 trillion for the first time as President Trump continues to face economic headwinds just months before the midterm elections. All while he threatens what he's calling economic warfare at an unprecedented scale on Iran as that war continues to drive up energy prices. The debt has exploded over several administrations. It rose nearly $8 trillion during the first Trump administration. It rose by more than $8 trillion under President Biden, and it's risen by trillions of dollars under Mr. Trump's second administration. The White House, however, downplaying the new marker and blaming the Biden administration for the rising debt.
Look, the 40 trillion is a big number. It is smaller when we look at the publicly traded amount because our Social Security funds and other government entities hold a substantial amount. And what we're going to do, we're going to have to grow our way out of this. And remember, we did not get here in a day. That we were left with a mess. The Biden administration had the highest deficit to GDP in history when we weren't at war or weren't in a recession. For 2025, we brought it down by more than 1%.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also telling CNBC there's a very good chance the budget deficit under President Trump has already peaked. The soaring debt only adding to concerns about inflation, which comes as President Trump is underwater on his handling of the cost of living, inflation, and the economy. Meanwhile, the war with Iran continues to drive up fuel prices here at home. The national average for gas at $4.10 a gallon today, while oil prices are up roughly 30% a barrel since the start of the war. And now President Trump is ramping up economic warfare against Iran. In a post on social media, the president announcing, quote, the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country, and going on to call it an economic D-Day. But the president and the Treasury Secretary offering few details on what those sanctions could be.
What else could be sanctioned on Iran?
Well, we have things that we could sanction. We have very draconian sanctions, and we'll see what happens.
The economic pressure means that we are going to all of our allies, and this is going to be the greatest coordinated economic isolation in the history of the world. And we are going to them and saying, you are either with us or against us. It is time for our allies and the rest of the world to make a decision, and we are going to squash the economy of this murderous regime.
But Iran's foreign minister claiming this latest threat against Tehran is just a distraction from the president's own domestic woes, saying, quote, the so-called economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis, unprecedented debt, and surging interest costs. Joining me now is NBC News business and economy reporter Ali Kanal, NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor is at the White House, and also with me is Ravi Agrawal, editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy magazine. Thanks to all of you for being here. Ali, let me start with you. We know that this increase in the debt didn't happen overnight. It has happened over several administrations. But how did the country get to $40 trillion in debt?
Yeah, Kristen, it is important to remember that this is pretty party agnostic. This is something that both Democrats and Republicans have been dealing with for quite some time now. And if we zoom in over the past decade or so, COVID, that was pretty much a huge accelerant. 2 years of massive spending, trillions of dollars to fund some of those pandemic relief programs. You also, though, had some major policy choices under both President Biden and President Trump when it comes to spending. So Biden really spending aggressively on infrastructure, on clean energy initiatives. Then you have President Trump, the one big beautiful bill, massive tax cuts, increased spending to military, immigration enforcement. That's part of the reason why this administration has leaned so heavily into tariffs to try and bring more revenue into the United States. But as we saw earlier this year, the Supreme Court striking down those emergency tariffs, and now the government is actually having to give back some of that money. Then you also have these longer-term structural issues within the economy. We have an aging population that requires more spending on things like Medicare and Social Security. And you also have these just inflationary inflationary pressures across the board. And the result is this national debt that's doubled since 2017, $40 trillion. That's about 123% of the size of the entire U.S. economy. But what analysts are so concerned with right now is how much it's costing to carry that debt, the interest on that debt, because the government has spent nearly $1.2 trillion on interest alone so far this year. And that's actually on pace to surpass what we spend on something like Medicare. And that's creating a lot of jitters in the bond market right now. We're seeing this surge in longer term treasury yields. And that's where this starts to impact everyday Americans, because that affects things like mortgage rates, the loan you pay on your car, credit card bills, business to business borrowing. So there are some clear economic consequences here.
So let me follow up with you on that point, Allie, because there has been turmoil in the bond market. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has intervened in the markets, or at least he's trying to. What exactly is he doing, and could it work?
Yeah, really surprising announcement from the U.S. Treasury Department, basically saying that the U.S. government is going to buy back some of this longer term debt, but they're going to double it. So they were going to buy back this debt, $2 billion. Now they're doubling that to $4 billion. And Treasury Secretary Bessent earlier today suggesting that number could be even higher. And you can basically think of this as the government reshuffling some of its debt, trying to calm the bond market down and bring those long-term interest rates lower. And it initially worked. We did see the 30-year yield fall pretty sharply after that initial announcement, but we are seeing yields tick up once again. We have stocks falling across the board, all three major indices closing the day in the red. And a big reason why is that this doesn't address the fundamental concerns. The government still has $40 trillion in debt. It's still borrowing a lot of money. And inflation concerns, they're not going away anytime soon. We have this ongoing war with Iran that's boosting energy prices. All of that is contributing to these fears in the bond market. So, you know, what the answer is, I think that remains to be seen. And that's why this is so important right now.
Yeah, and I know you're going to track it closely, Allie. Thank you so much for helping us understand a complicated set of facts there. Really appreciate it. Sahil, let me turn to you at the White House. What are your sources there telling you about how concerned they are about this $40 trillion figure and what the impact might be on the midterms? Is there an urgency to address the debt?
Well, quite simply, Kristen, there is no urgency whatsoever at the White House or in the Republican-led Congress to take action that would reduce the national debt. If anything, the agenda of this Republican trifecta over the last year and a half has been adding more red ink through the president's big, beautiful bill, which added an estimated $3.4 trillion to the debt, according to the nonpartisan CBO. They had another party line bill that would add $72 billion to the national debt by increasing immigration enforcement. There were also tax cuts in the previous one. There's now a third attempt by President Trump for a party line bill that would add $95 billion to the debt, put that on the credit card through aid to farmers, election enforcement, increasing the military. Trump, in fact, wants to increase military spending from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion, which would be a massive increase. There's no way he's going to get that in Congress, but if he even gets close, it means Democrats are going to want more spending on the domestic front, which is the pattern we've seen in these annual appropriations bills. Democrats want more spending on the domestic side. Republicans want more on the military side. So they just keep adding more and more red ink. So I don't see that changing anytime in the foreseeable future. Where this does potentially hit the kitchen table is going down the road. If interest rates continue to increase, if debt continues to pile up, and there are real consequences of the sort that we had not seen for the last decade and a half, it could hit consumers directly in terms of mortgages, car payments, things like that. They're not quite there yet. I think the inflation and rising costs are the more near-term significant problem that Republicans face in the midterms, Kristen.
Well, Sahil, let's talk about this economic D-Day that President Trump talked about. What exactly is it? Are you getting any more information about the specifics? Because as we just showed, the president and the Treasury Secretary aren't giving a whole lot of details.
Yeah, short answer, Kristen, the White House is not revealing its cards here. The Treasury Secretary said earlier today that he plans to roll this out on Monday, to make the announcement on Monday, and he didn't quite specify what it would entail. I think the big question is what sorts of tools does the administration have to further economically isolate a country like Iran, which is already so heavily isolated. I think more notable in what the president said when he made this announcement is that he wants tremendous consequences against any country or entity that provides support to Iran. Is he talking about China? Is he talking about Russia? Bessent was also asked about that today. He did not reveal the answer to that, said those discussions are to be left private. I think one thing we can take away from this is Bessent downplayed the idea of additional bombing. He said any large-scale kinetic restart is unlikely to happen. Kristen.
That certainly is a significant headline. Sahil Kapoor, thank you for your reporting from the White House. Ravi Agrawal, let me turn to you. If you would, pick up on where Sahil just left off, which is what is left for the U.S. to actually sanction in Iran. It's already so heavily sanctioned.
It is. And look, part of the issue here is that the more you sanction an already sanctioned country, it just hardens its ways. I mean, look at North Korea, for example. Decades of sanctions haven't really changed its behavior. I think the biggest issue to look at here is how China reacts, because China gets about 80% of Iran's oil. Were the United States to follow through on targeting and sanctioning entities that do business with Iran, that would mean some form of retaliation on China, which is possible theoretically, but we shouldn't forget that China itself has retaliated on American tariffs in the past year to the extent of cutting off its supplies of rare earths, critical minerals, magnets that go into the manufacturing of semiconductors, automakers. China now has the ability to shut down supply chains for some of the world's biggest companies. And that is the reason why the United States has been very reluctant since last year to try and commit any actions against China. All of that, I think, makes potential action on Iran much weaker.
Well, and to that point, I mean, if the United States were to impose new sanctions on Iran, on countries that do business with Iran, who ultimately would pay the price? Would it be the people of Iran? The leadership does not seem to be moved very much by its own people suffering.
That is one of the biggest problems here. Take, for example, sanctions on, say, pharmaceutical companies. So let's say it becomes even harder than it already is for regular Iranians to buy medicines, any supplies for healthcare. They're the ones who are going to suffer. You know, in a normal circumstance, when you sanction a country that cares about its people, you might be able to change its behavior. In the case of the Iranian regime, they have already shown that they are willing to impose immense costs on their own people, therefore making it much harder to do anything that would hurt them directly. So Trump is in a very difficult situation with Iran. He doesn't want to go back to war. He's running out of munitions. He's running out of leverage. And really, I see this latest move as an announcement without much detail and possibly just a distraction. I wouldn't rule out further kinetic action, as Bessent said, because, you know, maybe that might be an option they do have to resort to. This is an administration that has obfuscated, distracted in the past, but really they are mired in a war in the Middle East with no good outcomes.
Is Iran basically waiting out the president? Is that a potential strategy that we're seeing unfold here?
I think so, but it's important to remember that if you have a very long time horizon, let's say 4, 5, 6 years, there is little doubt that the United States can punish Iran to a degree that will make it fold, whether it's economically or military. But this won't go on that long. I think Iran's calculation is to wait it out until at least the midterms cause immense economic pain to the United States economy, but also the global economy. And so if they play a shorter term, medium term game, then they feel they can wait out the United States. If Trump is suddenly willing to withstand a lot more economic pain than we know that he is, then this changes.
Ravi Agrawal, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Well, as we mentioned, the economy and affordability are top of mind for voters as we inch closer to the midterm elections, including in key battlegrounds, where a recent Fox News poll found the top issue for voters across 7 states was inflation and high prices, far surpassing the next most important issue. In the latest edition of our focus group series produced by Syracuse University and the research firms Engatius and Sego, we spoke to undecided voters in Georgia and Iowa, 2 of those states with key Senate races this November. Here's what some of them told us about their view of the economy. Take a look.
Who would say the state of the economy is a big consideration in how you plan to vote in this year's midterm elections? State of the economy. All 5 of you. The state of the economy is a big consideration in how you plan to vote. 6 of you.
Everything is inflated. A lot of people who are in the lower economy struggling more than they have before.
I have to drive 45 minutes just to be able to afford my groceries, but then you're dealing with the gas prices on top of that. In the lower middle class where I sit, we're being killed.
Prices, tariffs, just making things more expensive.
Just the basic cost of living, gas prices, food prices.
Going to the grocery store, trying to buy groceries, trying to pay for gas.
Even my utilities have gone up tremendously since last summer. What else can I do to lower the cost or make more money? I feel like I'm doing so much.
Joining me now is Margaret Talev, director of Syracuse University's Democracy, Journalism, and Citizenship Institute. Margaret, thanks for being here. It's always great to have you. So I want to play a little bit more sound because the group also talked about President Trump's handling of the economy. I want to play that. We'll talk about it on the other side.
I think the president's more concerned about himself. I think the people behind him are trying to work on ways to improve the economy, but the person in front is not.
Flat out said on camera, he does not care about it. He does not care that we're paying $4 a gallon or over.
Honestly, it comes down to just nothing has gotten better as far as the cost of living, inflation, food is astronomical.
Shutting down the strait over there, by shutting it down, it's getting us less supplies over here, less gas over here, so prices are going up a lot.
The war in Iran, the Epstein files, high gas prices, which in turn means high grocery prices. Things like that are just not quite where I think that they should be.
Disillusioned with pretty much everything he's done since he took office. He's more worried about his vanity projects, like the reflecting pool and his ballroom, than he is with the real problems in this country.
It's not like it's unusual from a politician, but those are pretty big deals to promise and then not fulfill those promises.
Margaret, these focus groups are always so fascinating and revealing. And we should say many of those voters actually voted for President Trump in 2024. Yeah. Did any of them say they regretted their vote?
Yeah, so this is 9 out of the 12 voted for President Trump. This is not a group of raging liberals. I think there was one Democrat in this group, and the others were split between independents and Republicans. So that's what we're talking about here. You still have plenty of people in this group who are super skeptical of Democrats, concerned about socialism in the Democratic Party or the DSA, but roundly, uniformly, President Trump they're disappointed in his performance, including people who voted for him, including people who still want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Disappointed. Almost all, I think all but one, said the economy is going to be a major factor in how they vote in November, and a majority saying that their disappointment with him will play some role in how they think about voting.
Well, to take that to the next level, you're talking about Georgia and Iowa, which have two big Senate and gubernatorial races. By the way, if the economy plays a role in how they vote, I mean, in those big races, do you think they actually, will weigh in that way?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
Democrats hope that's what happens, but here's some reasons why that isn't such a sure thing, right? Many of these voters did not make the tactical connection. They're like, we're disappointed in Trump. We're really worried about the economy. It's going to factor on our vote. But then you go to the next question. Would you vote for Democrats to try to change the balance of power in Congress to block Trump? And they're like, what? So it's not sort of strategic, but it's more emotional. It's a feeling. A couple other things that we're really noticing. Iowa, a lot of concern about the tariffs and the impact that the tariffs have had. In Georgia, a different concern, data centers. And you're seeing this in the polling now. I mean, Gallup showing data centers have become a top 5 issue. My colleagues at Axios writing about Republicans being quite concerned in Ohio in particular about data centers. We saw this here in the conversation with Georgia voters. 3 out of the 4 voters saying their data centers are something they're watching very closely. 3 out of the 4 saying in a negative way they're watching it.
Well, it's so interesting. And that conversation about data centers really playing out in so many races in key battleground states. Margaret, is there any area where they gave President Trump high marks uniformly?
Actually, I don't think so. There were a couple who said that, they think he's trying or, but this is a real change over the course of time that we've been doing these focus groups. And the stock market is an area where about 2/3 of these voters are in the market. And so it's not necessarily that they're crediting Trump, but they're like, yeah, we feel good. We look at, our holdings and they've gone up. We feel cautiously optimistic. But then we go to the grocery store or the gas pump and it's a disaster and we can't touch the money in our 401k. This is what we're living with every day. One of my favorite parts of these focus groups, Rich, our moderator, who you see there.
Who does such a fantastic job.
He's the best, right?
Yeah.
Asking, have you had to give anything up because of affordability? And their answers were so personal that they really grab your attention. One of the participants said, I had to stop buying orange juice. It was like a frivolity. I couldn't make the case for orange juice anymore. Another guy said he had bought himself a really nice laptop and realized he was going to have to sell it to cover his bases. And then for other people, I'm not going out to eat. I stopped buying clothes. So some of it are little things. Some of them are really big, tangible things, but all the way down to the orange juice on your kitchen counter.
It's just fascinating. Those types of hard choices so often inform what people do at the ballot box. Margaret Tolive, thank you. Great conversation, great information as always. Really appreciate it. Coming up, on the road again, Jon Allen is live in Des Moines from the one and only Iowa State Fair, talking to the voters who are set to decide some of November's most consequential midterm races. The latest installment of our Drive to Decision Day series is next. Plus, shifts and shakeups. A top elections forecaster just made some major moves, officially declaring the Texas Senate race a toss-up. Texas. We'll walk you through the changes. Stay with us. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. New warning signs today for Republicans as they seek to retain control of the Senate this November. The Cook Political Report shifting its rating for 2 Senate races in Democrats' favor, moving both Texas and Iowa from lean Republican to toss-up. Now, keep in mind, President Donald Trump won both states by double digits less than 2 years ago. Cook also shifting its rating for both states' gubernatorial races, moving Texas from solid Republican to likely Republican, and Iowa from toss-up to lean Democrat. And speaking of Iowa, we are on the road and in Iowa today for day 5 of our Drive to Decision Day. Our own Jon Allen and crew are in the Hawkeye State for a second day as part of their 6-day, 5-state tour of 8 competitive House races. They've made their way to Des Moines, the state capital and home of the world-famous Iowa State Fair. There it is. You see it there. It's also part of Iowa's competitive 3rd congressional district, where Republican Congressman Zach Nunn is facing a challenge from State Senator Sarah Trone-Garriott. It's a district Donald Trump won by less than 5 percentage points in 2024, and which Nunn won by less than 4 percentage points. Jon Allen joins me now from Des Moines. So, John, great to see you. We're loving every day on the road with you. You're at the Iowa State Fair, and you just bumped into the newly sworn-in Attorney General, Todd Blanche. What did he tell you? Why was he there?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here, Kristen. Not just Attorney General Todd Blanche, but we also saw a butter cow. As you can see, there's corn dogs, et cetera. But Attorney General Blanche, a couple of things. Number one, he had no comment on the raid on Eric Swalwell's house, the former congressman. Not terribly surprising. They don't talk about active investigations. But here's what he had to say about his own political future. You running for president?
I'm not, no.
Are you sure?
No, I'm sure.
Never? Because usually people come here, they flip.
For sure.
And he may be the first person at his level to come flip pork at the Iowa State Fair and not be running for president, Kristen.
Well, John, what a valiant effort you got to have him answer that question. He gave you a pretty firm answer. I'm glad you are staying hydrated and well fed there. You've got your corn dog, of course. No better corn dog than at the Iowa State Fair. But look, we know a lot of 2028 hopefuls do go to the Iowa State Fair, John. What are people telling you? What are Iowans saying about who they're thinking about?
Yeah, for some of them, it's not something that's really crossed their radar so much. Some of them have early favorites. Some of the Democrats we talked to here, mentioned a few of the Democratic names. One of the ones that I heard today was Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey. On the Republican side, we talked to a gentleman who said he was actually part of a kind of a straw poll, if you will, but actually a bean poll where he wrote the name of his favorite candidate on a bean and put it in a jar and he was for Marco Rubio. So starting to think about it a little bit here in Iowa at the fair, which, by the way, people tell me is the best state fair in the state.
Well, it looks like everyone's just having a blast based on all the video that you guys got. You were in Davenport yesterday, John. What did folks there tell you about the state of that House race in Davenport?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, Kristen. You mentioned the Cook Political Report moving toward Democrats in the Senate race and the gubernatorial race. And we definitely heard some things from Davenport voters there in the 1st District of Iowa earlier in the day yesterday. Definitely heard from them that they feel like there's some movement, both those who are for that movement, who are in favor of Democrats, and also some of the Republicans who are going to vote Republican think things are moving in the Democrats' favor. We'll have to see how that shakes out on Election Day. But last night, we talked to a couple of Trump supporters, and they said they're likely to vote Republican in the congressional race for Congresswoman Marionette Miller Meeks. And here's why they're going to vote Republican.
I think the socialists are winning and they're kind of taking over. And
they're getting rid of us old people, the old people in there, and bringing in the younger ones, and they're going to take over. And you're going to have a king. They don't want a king, but they're going to have a king.
And that's David and Dorothy Quakenbush, and the reason that they're afraid of Democrats and why they're sure they're going to vote Republican in November.
Very quickly, John, I know a lot of folks usually get a T-shirt on the road, but one of the crew members got something much more interesting. Tell us about it quick.
Marshall Crook got himself a tattoo of the moth from Silence of the Lambs. We got some great footage of that. Hope folks are able to check that out on social media. So we acquired a tattoo. I got a shave. We got a new tire on the strip. And, of course, I got this corn dog. I promised my friend who told me once, don't eat the corn dog, that I would not actually eat it on television. So I've taken a bite, and I'll eat the rest of it when we're done.
Well, bring some home for us. It sure does look good. Jon Allen, great stuff. As always, can't wait to see you tomorrow from Nebraska. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Kristen.
Coming up next, one-on-one with the Democratic Socialist who just pulled off a major upset victory in Florida's Senate primary. Can she put the state in play in November? State Representative and Democratic candidate for governor Angie Nixon is standing by. Keep it right here on Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. The stage is set for the Senate race in Florida with Democratic Socialist candidate Angie Nixon pulling off a major upset in her primary as she now faces incumbent Senator Ashley Moody in a state that's been trending increasingly red. Angie Nixon today also securing a notable endorsement from progressive Senator Bernie Sanders as she pivots to the general election matchup. And joining me now is Florida's Democratic candidate for Senate, State Representative Angie Nixon. Thank you so much for joining me, and congratulations on your primary win.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dive in. Florida, which has been trending increasingly red, as you know, in the last several elections. President Trump won 3 times. Why do you think this state is now ready to vote for a Democratic Socialist in the Senate?
So thank you for having me. And I want to be clear, the state is not red. The state has just not been invested in by Democrats. And so now I am super excited because I am a union organizer, a community organizer, and we know what it takes to win across the state is to actually go and talk to voters and let them know that we deserve better. When we're talking about the issues that Floridians are facing and that Americans are facing in this country, it's all the same across the board when it comes to Republicans, Democrats, independents, any label, right? Folks are fed up with the current status quo and the fact that people like unelected Ashley Moody and Donald Trump are only looking out for their campaign donors and their billionaire and ultra wealthy millionaire friends and family. They want some relief. I am running as a Democrat. I happen to also be a member of DSA, a member of the Working Families Party, a member of the NAACP, a member of countless organizations that want to ensure that we have access to quality health care. We also want to make sure that we have access to to quality housing. We also want to make sure that we have fully funded public schools that provide a quality education. And that is resonating across the board. They are tired of people turning their backs on them, these elected officials who are actually working less and less and less and getting richer. Meanwhile, we're working harder than ever and still struggling to stay afloat.
I want to play some of what your opponent, Senator Ashley Moody, has said about your campaign and get your response on the other side. Take a look.
My opponent will be a self-proclaimed socialist that proudly signed up and joined the Democratic Socialists of America. Angie Nixon, who will be my opponent in November, and her comrades want to destroy this country and everything that it is built on.
Some strong words there. How do you respond?
You know, when people's voice start getting squeaky and really high pitched, usually they're lying. And Ashley Moody knows that I'm not a socialist. I joined the DSA because I believe in them in regards to fighting for adequate public housing, as well as fighting for quality health care, as well as making sure that we are getting our veterans off the street, taking big money out of politics, right? The Democratic Party is a big tent. It is a big tent, and it's an everybody party. We have folks on the left, on the right, to the middle of the party, and I'm super excited to be on a ticket with someone like David Jolly, with someone like JJR, because we bring different things, and that's what folks, but at the end of the day, what folks want, as I stated earlier, is they are tired of the status quo. Ashley Moody is someone who decided to use $10 million that was supposed to be directed at the most medically needy kids in our state. She allowed that to be diverted to defeat 2 citizen-led ballot initiatives, which would have helped improve our health for Floridians here in the state. She also decided to increase, she voted against the ACA subsidies, which basically knocked off over 300,000 people off the ACA rolls. So our private insurance went up, as well as those folks who lost their insurance. She doesn't care about anyone but looking out for her billionaire friends.
Let me ask you, because you did join the DSA, and I think people and voters have questions about where you stand as it relates to the DSA platform. So let's go through a few of the issues that they stand for. The DSA calls for abolishing the Senate, the office that you are running for. Do you support abolishing the Senate?
No, I don't. No, I don't support that.
Not at all. Okay. Well, let's go through a couple more. The DSA platform also calls for defunding the Pentagon and lifting sanctions on Iran. Do you support defunding the Pentagon or lifting sanctions on Iran?
I think we need to make sure that we are looking at the Department of Defense budget with a fine-tooth comb. They are the only agency or department that has failed an audit. And so I want to make sure that we're spending our money wisely. Right now, we are in a very expensive war in Iran, which has caused some of our military men and women to lose their lives. And it has also caused Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump, to get richer, and many of their campaign donors who are defense contractors to get richer. People are frustrated at that.
But would you go so far as actually supporting defunding the military?
I think we need to figure out what we're going to use our funding on, right?
So you don't rule that out?
I don't believe in funding. I don't believe in defunding anything. I think we need to make sure that we are scrutinizing them, and we need to make sure we're spending money the right way. What I do want to make sure we're doing, we need to make sure we're fully funding public education. We need to make sure that we are fully funding Medicare and providing universal health care for people, because people shouldn't be going bankrupt simply because they go to the doctor. We also need to make sure that we're providing things like universal child care. And how do we do this? Well, we repeal that big BS bill because it wasn't beautiful, the one that Donald Trump pushed, and we make these billionaires pay what they owe. We also close these corporate tax loopholes. The fact remains that over 88 companies last year made over $105 billion, and they paid absolutely nothing in federal taxes. I've been talking to people, and it was a woman who told me she made $55,000 last year, and she's on a payment plan with the IRS.
So it sounds like you do want to make big changes to how the military is funded. Would that run the risk of making the United States vulnerable to attacks?
You know who's making us vulnerable to attacks? Donald Trump. Donald Trump is bullying folks. Donald Trump is being disrespectful. He's trying to just, do things that the Congress and Senate has not agreed to do. And so, again, we need to make sure that we are scrutinizing all of our spending with a fine-tooth comb. There are veterans that are living unhoused on the streets. There are active duty military people who are on their families, their spouses who are on food stamps. Clearly something is broken right now. And so we need to make sure that Pete Hegseth isn't allowing combat helicopters to go outside of Kid Rock's home for a cool social media moment. Our taxpayer dollars shouldn't be spent on that. There are literally people rationing their prescription drugs right now. We need to make that stop.
Okay, the DSA platform also calls for drafting a new constitution. Do you support that, drafting a new constitution?
I don't support that, but what I do support is making sure that we're fully following the Constitution, which is everything that Donald Trump is against. We need to make sure that we are enforcing the Constitution and enforcing our laws and not allowing someone like Donald Trump, who happens to be a 34-count adjudicated rapist, to actually circumvent those things.
Well, it sounds like you disagree with a number of the DSA policy items, while agreeing with some of them, perhaps.
But the main policy items that I agree with, which unfortunately leadership within the Democratic caucuses don't agree with, is making sure that we have access to universal health care, right? I don't understand what is wrong with me not wanting people to go bankrupt if they go to the doctor. There are literally people who are dying because health insurance companies want to deny their claims. They want to deny them life-saving health care. Like, that is wrong. Do we not see anything wrong with these companies doing this? They're only doing this because they want to make a profit.
Why join the DSA if you disagree with various parts of their platform? Does it not just become a distraction from your own campaign and your own agenda?
You all are the only ones that are distracted. I'm actually going out talking to voters about the things that matter to them. And so we should make sure that we're pivoting to the right conversations. The fact remains that there are people who are dying because they don't have access to quality health care. Meanwhile, Ashley Moody voted to end the ACA subsidies. As I stated, nearly 300,000 people fell off the Affordable Care Act rolls. There are people who are dying because they don't have access to health care. Also, the fact that Ashley Moody is corrupt, right? She's corrupt. She allowed $10 million that was supposed to go towards the most medically needy kids to be diverted because they wanted to defeat 2 citizen-led ballot initiatives. The status quo is broken. People are losing their minds right now and taking their lives and even taking their children's lives. And the people at the top want to stoke division and want to push this hateful rhetoric. At the end of the day, I have always been about the people of Florida, which is why my campaign is Angie for Florida. I want people to no longer just survive. They deserve to thrive and flourish.
Very quickly, because I know that you have to go. Congressman Jolly says he is a capitalist. Would you call yourself a capitalist, or do you reject capitalism?
I live in a capitalistic society. I'm a small business owner. I like to make money. I don't see what the problem is.
So are you a capitalist?
I'm a capitalist who believes that we need some strong regulation.
Okay. All right. And will you campaign with David Jolly? Are you planning to campaign with him?
I don't have a problem campaigning with anyone on the Democratic ticket that is for actually having quality health care, that's for actually expanding access to universal child care. I want people who want to improve the quality of life for all Floridians. I'm sorry, I am still operating on a minimum amount of sleep, but I am out here just, talking to people. I'm super excited. Look, y'all, it doesn't have to be this way. I believe that hardworking, everyday people should get to shape what our communities look like and what our economies look like. Instead of this billionaire class that is actually running the show, I'm ready to put the power back in the hands of the people.
All right. Well, I know that you probably have not slept much. Angie Nixon, thank you for joining us on a very busy week for you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
All right, please come back soon. We should note we have also extended an invitation to Angie Nixon's challenger, Senator Ashley Moody. And we will be right back with more Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Joining me now is today's panel, Benji Sarlin, senior editor for politics, policy, and ideas for Vox. Taryn Rosenkrantz, former managing director of the DCC and founder of New Blue Interactive. And Sarah Chamberlain, Republican strategist and president and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Thanks to all of you for being here. Benji, I want to start with you, just get your reaction to the interview I just had with Angie Nixon. Here she is running as a progressive candidate in Florida. Republicans feeling very good about their chances because the state is increasingly red, but she rejects that characterization. She says there are plenty of Democrats here. We just have to invest in them.
Yeah, and it is sort of a chicken and egg problem, right? Democrats complain there, we can't win because national Democrats don't think we can win, therefore we can't invest.
Right.
And one obstacle for her that your interview was getting to a bit is that one of the things that has made this state very difficult for Democrats is the rise of the socialist label. Bernie Sanders in 2016, just the attention he was getting as the first kind of very prominent national Democrat who carried this Democratic Socialist label, spurred a lot of conversations there where you have a lot of different immigrant communities who specifically escaped communist countries, and it's a very loaded word in a way it maybe isn't in some other states. So one difficulty she's going to run in here is how do you raise money and convince national donors you can win the state if you have this baggage?
Yeah, how much baggage do you think there is, Taryn? You felt her struggling with some of these questions, particularly on the military, which I thought was interesting. I thought that was the closest she got to agreeing with one of the agenda items on the DSA platform.
Right. The other, she was kind of clear, like, no. And it did lead to the exact question you asked of, like, well, then why are you joining this party?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be difficult for her, but at the same time, I think that the attention and excitement that brought to having this label and sort of like this insurgent campaign that came out of nowhere is something that probably Florida is a little bit excited about, in the sense of like, oh, wait, maybe we'll pay attention to this. This is interesting. It's in these like redder states that people feel have gotten further away from them, that in a primary, that's who shows up at the table. But she brought it all back to affordability issues and education and healthcare. And I think that's what she's going to have to do if she wants to succeed here.
Sarah, how did you see this interview? How do you view this race? And do Republicans run the risk of underestimating the enthusiasm that we are seeing on the progressive left?
This is Florida, and I was thrilled to see that interview because now I think that really takes this race off the table. I agree with Cook Report and some of the others that said, okay, she probably cannot win statewide. It is still Florida, no matter what we think. And the gentleman she was running against didn't take her seriously. And it's all, primaries are very small turnout. And clearly he sat on his money waiting for the general. And he didn't get his people to turn out. It reminds me of Mike Castle from years ago.
Yeah, you think Ashley Moody will take this threat seriously?
I think she will. She'll work it, but I think she'll win pretty handily.
Okay.
Yes.
Benji, let's talk about another race that we're watching in South Carolina, the special election there where Darlene Graham, the sister of the late Senator Lindsey Graham, was in a debate this week. She was asked about Taiwan. She admittedly stumbled over her answer. She has tried to clean it up in the days afterwards. Here she was on Hannity. Let's take a listen to what she had to say and get your reaction.
I tripped up on one question last night regarding Taiwan. But, I've said many times, I'm not a politician, certainly not a career politician. I don't speak politician. I was just honest, and I think that's kind of a foreign concept. But I talked to several people today. I traveled around the state, and they said, we appreciated the fact that you were honest. And I did say several times that, China is our enemy, our military and economic threat to the United States.
Benji, she says, I don't speak politician. Is that the kind of authenticity that some voters may actually welcome? In other words, do you think she may have cleaned this up? Where do you think it stands?
It depends how it gets framed and how voters interpret it. On one level, plenty of politicians have succeeded after flubbing a question on foreign policy. Obviously, Donald Trump, who's her most important backer, but on the left, on the right, often they don't have familiarity with these kind of tricky issues. On the other hand, the primary argument that's being made against her by her opponent is that this is an inexperienced person who therefore will be bullied by her Washington handlers, whether it's Trump or someone else, into just doing what they want. And if this feeds that suspicion that this is someone who is just kind of an empty suit there for others to control, then it's a problem.
Yeah. Sarah, how do you see this? She did top Ralph Norman, her challenger, by 8 points. Do you think he can come back? I mean, obviously, you're going to see a different turnout for the runoff.
I think it's going to be difficult for him to come back. She does have Trump's backing.
And he's going to campaign with her.
He's going to campaign with her. And I have a lot of friends who live in South Carolina. They actually found it refreshing that she told the truth. They were disappointed that a sitting United States senator didn't know. But at the same time, they're like, oh, my God, she had enough confidence to just look at the camera and tell the truth. And they're sure that she'll learn it pretty quickly after that flub.
Taryn, South Carolina, talk about a red state. It's a red state. Do you think that Democrat Annie Andrews has a shot here? How are Democrats viewing this?
I think that these are the kinds of states where things can surprise you. This has been an election season full of surprises, so don't get me wrong. And I do think that not having Lindsey Graham on the ballot does shake things up significantly. And even though Graham will be on the ballot, it's going to be a different story. So I do think that there's a lot more possibility than there were a few months ago before his unfortunate passing. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, just still such a shock, I think, to everyone that he has passed. I do want to talk about what we're learning from the Cook Political Report today. This was really remarkable. It shifted both Texas and Iowa Senate races. Benji Sarlin from lean Republican to toss up. What do you make of this? And are you surprised? I mean, we're talking about Texas here.
Yeah, I mean, these are two states where Democrats have tried to run serious, well-funded, competitive candidates before and just fallen short over and over again in the Trump era specifically. I think what we're seeing here is that this late in the race, heading into the actual home stretch of the general election, these are states that Democrats are going to be putting money into. They are going to be taking seriously. They are getting over whatever reservations they had. And it's by no means guaranteed they win them. But that is a level of baseline expectation now.
Taryn, Benji says something that I think is interesting, which is how the money game gets played. And Democrats will undoubtedly now funnel more money into a Texas and an Iowa. Will they, in fact, funnel money away from Florida or not? Spend a whole lot of time there.
I think there's a lot of investment decisions that are going to be made, and they're going to be made up until the late October when people have already even early voted, because I think this is the name of the game, especially with social media, which is something I spend a lot of time doing all day long. We know that things change and opinions change so quickly that everyone can go from 0 to 100 pretty fast. And so with that kind of speed breaking numbers, I think you're going to see that being able to respond quickly and, put those ads in and get that message out is really going to be up until the last minute. People are going to be moving the chess pieces around here.
Sarah, is this setting off alarm bells in the Republican Party, or was this expected? Tell me what your conversations are.
So it is setting off alarm bells. Obviously, candidates matter. If it had been Cornyn, they could have pulled all their money and gone to another state. And Randy Feenstra, not on the top for the governor's race. That hurt the Senate race there as well. So there's a lot of dynamics going on. And after what happened in Florida, I think the Democrats will pull all their money out of Florida and drop it in those two states. And I think they have a real chance of picking both seats up.
Well, and you're right. This is one of these moments where you have to look at the quality of the candidate. All right, great conversation. Thank you so much, Benji, Taryn, and Sarah. Really appreciate your being here. Still to come, we do have some breaking news to tell you about. A foiled ISIS-inspired terror plot targeting the Capitol in New York. We'll explain. Stay with us on Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. We are following breaking news. The FBI says it's thwarted a plot to attack the New York State Capitol. Federal officials have charged Jessica Bowie with providing support to a terror group. They say she told a confidential source she supported ISIS and asked for help learning to make explosives.
Miss Bowie's alleged plot was serious, it was dangerous, and thanks to the partnerships on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, it was foiled. Miss Bowie didn't just want to kill lawmakers, she wanted a complete disruption of our government. And after that, she planned to flee the country and one day come back to, quote, do more, such as New Year's Eve in Times Square. even stating she would come back to attack the White House and the president, but only after she bombed the state capitol.
NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter joins me now. Tom, thanks for being here on this breaking news. Tell me what investigators are saying about Jessica Bowie. She's, again, the woman charged in this alleged plot.
Yeah, Kristen, it's a bit of an unusual plot in the fact of her age. 35 is older than we typically see in a woman. Most of these cases, as you know from our years of reporting on these ISIS support cases, are typically males. She apparently converted to Islam 5 years ago, but in the last about 4 or 5 months, according to charging documents, really became interested with the idea of extremism, pledging allegiance to ISIS. And these photos we've been showing you there, particularly at that Home Depot, is her, according to authorities, actually buying the ingredients for a bomb. And she even wondered if the nails to be used as shrapnel were big enough. So this is somebody who had real aspirations to cause serious damage. And yet another example, Kristen, of us talking about potential political violence as well.
Yeah, it's a really important point, Tom. I'm curious, though, how did she actually land on their radar in the first place? How did they become aware of her?
Yeah, so there was some discussion that she had about making an oath or a bayah to ISIS, where she would have pledged allegiance to ISIS. And in the course of their investigation in the JTTF, they began to pick up on the fact that this was somebody, in their words, quite serious about committing a terrorist attack. Then they introduced upwards of 3 confidential human sources, basically informants, to interact with her to see just how far she wanted to go.
Very quickly, Tom, do they think anyone else was involved in this alleged plot?
Yeah, right now, no indication of that, Kristen. This does appear to be an individual acting alone. Not a lot of indication at this point that anybody was directing this from overseas. But of course, as these investigations continue, we'll just have to track and see where they take it from here.
Tom Winter reporting from New York on this breaking news. We really appreciate it, Tom. Thank you so very much. And we are back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now. There is much more ahead on NBC News Now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.